Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Modern Farming Podcast, where agriculture meets education, innovation, and outreach.
We're your hosts, Chris and Tara, and together we're growing knowledge about the world that feeds us.
Yes, and knowledge and innovation is center stage today, Tara, because we've got a young man that's really got a new product that's very interesting to the people who in agriculture and growers.
Yes, I think we're going to learn about worms today.
Yeah, we are, and worms is going to be the topic of the podcast. With us today is Mr. Sam Baker. He is the CEO and founder of Wriggle Brew. So welcome, Sam, to the podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your product?
Sweet. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm Sam Baker. I run a company called Wriggle Brew, and what we do is we make earthworm fertilizer. So that's primarily really earthworm manure, or really earthworm poop, and a liquid we make from that earthworm poop, which we actually call Wriggle Brew. And it has a lot of cool benefits, and it's very, very useful for agriculture, as you'll learn momentarily.
That's great. So, Sam, can we start off? Just give us your background a little bit. I know you're a local Central Florida resident, and you went to school there. Can you just tell us how this kind of all came about? Because I know it's a very interesting story.
Sure. So, I myself am from Central Florida originally. In fact, my family has lived in Florida for a very long time. I think I'm like a seventh generation Floridian or something like that. So it's been a long, long time running. And the reason I care about fertilizer it is not just because it has a strong impact on our state. A lot of people don't know this, but the use of fertilizer, contributes to soil degradation and runoff. That's a big problem here in Florida. But also because it personally affected me. When I was about 19, I was going out fishing with my grandpa. There's this spot we used to like to go to a lot. And it's nearby a housing development. And as that development was put up, a bunch of fertilizer ran off as they were putting up the sod and the grass and everything. And it killed all the fish in that little pond. And that got me very upset and very interested in fertilizer and fertilizer runoff in our state because, like I said, I'm a seventh generation Floridian. So it made me think, well, if there's an eighth generation, or if I have kids, really, where are they going to go fishing? What will be left if this trend kind of continues? And so that led me down the wormhole, so to speak, learning about, where does fertilizer come from? How is it made? What's in it? And where does runoff come from? And what are the alternatives? And the answer to all of that really is, well, with fertilizer, the runoff comes from the fact that we use very synthetic chemicals, things like ammonia and urea to make our fertilizer. And we can fix that by switching from things like urea and ammonia to natural compounds, things like humic acid, which is what you find in earthworm manure. And so I ended up starting a business making earthworm poop, and the rest is history.
Nice.
That is awesome. So we heard on how you came to realization about the fertilizer with the pond. Was there a person in your life that inspired you also?
Definitely. I mean, there were a couple people that were kind of inspirational to me at that time. And one was definitely my grandpa, because he was the one I was actually going out fishing with and was explaining all this to me, and his understanding of it. That every time they put up a new housing development, new fertilizer runs off. When they lay down a whole bunch of sod. And but I was also inspired a lot by my best friend Gabe. So my friend Gabe, he has a background in biochemistry. We were actually working at the same lab at UCF, and he was the one I first learned about earthworms from, because I went to him sort of in my upset stupor about this, these fish kills from the runoff, and I said, "What do we do about it?" And he said, "Well, earthworms poop fertilizer, and the fertilizer that they produce is much better for the environment." He explained to me the chemistry behind it, and and explained that there are these organisms, these earthworms, that they're detritivores. They eat garbage, they eat waste, and they recycle it into a healthy kind of nutrition. And so that was very inspiring to me, because I was kind of shocked that we weren't doing anything with that. And I mean we in the sense that the agricultural industry. Now, later on, I learned, of course, there are major commercial worm farms throughout the country. There are none really in Florida, but there are some throughout the country. And many farmers do use earthworm castings and earthworm tea, the liquid derived from the castings, for their farms. But it's still very niche, and it's still very much a small part of the industry. So it became Gabe and I's mission to try and make it more mainstream.
Excellent, excellent. And you guys are deeply involved in the science of it. But one thing that I really just want to mention is earthworm poop or earthworm castings is quite possibly the best thing you can put on your agriculture, on your vegetables and fruits and trees. It is just absolutely pure, the purest form of nutrition for those guys. So that's great.
That's absolutely true. And on a pound for pound basis, and a lot of people don't realize this, earthworm manure is by far the single best organic manure out there. There are none that match it on a proportional basis. And when you compare it even to things like ammonia or urea, the synthetic compounds, they are at best, really equivalent to it. So, a lot of farms could easily switch essentially from these synthetic compounds to an organic fertilizer if they could get a hold of earthworm manure in a format that actually fit their infrastructure. And that was the challenge we later discovered is, this stuff is great, but how do you use it?
The capacity has to be there, especially for big farms, right? The convenience of synthetic fertilizers in a big drum is very easy to buy and store. But
exactly.
You guys are on the right track, right? By pushing this product and making people more interested, it can get to that. There's no reason it can't, right? It's just a way of thinking.
And also there was a big technical challenge, and this is what a lot of people don't realize with the worm tea is that earthworm castings, when you actually put them in water, you can make a liquid fertilizer out of them, one that can be sprayed on a typical farm. Like, for example, if you grow corn, right? A lot of corn fertilizer is applied by a boom, it's sprayed on. Well, you can't do that with a physical casting, but you can put the casting in water and make the tea to do that. But the problem is worm tea has a shelf life of 24 to 48 hours. It is an incredibly short shelf life. And so what that means is if the farmer has to cancel the application of fertilizer, he is going to essentially waste whatever liquid that he has produced. It also means that the farmer has to have a way to mix the solid with the liquid, and that's quite challenging. So the big issue for us at Wriggle Brew was not just the scale to actually make all of this worm poop, but it was to find a way to make it, to convert it into a format where the farmer could use it and where it would not go bad so quickly.
So working on that shelf life, what did you come up with?
That's a very good question. So, I mean, at first we thought, okay, well, maybe we'll just kind of sterilize it, right? We'll just boil it. We'll get rid of the microbiome, but it'll at least be shelf stable. Well, when you do that, it actually has some negative impacts because the fertilizer no longer has access to all these beneficial bacteria that are part of what make worm casting so good. The other problem is normal sterilization procedures don't really work on worm castings because they tend to break down the sensitive organic nutrients that actually make it valuable. So, we tried a lot of different methods to try and make it more and more shelf stable. And eventually we settled on a method, and I won't go too much into detail in it because it is somewhat proprietary, but where we essentially take out the pathogenic bacteria and then we selectively breed and force into a state of hibernation the beneficial bacteria. So you still have a microbiome in the worm tea, but it's a hibernating microbiome, and it is consisting now only of beneficial bacteria that don't cause the product to spoil. But it's quite an involved process. And so it wasn't simple. It took us in the end a year and a half to figure all this out. I mean, we were inspired by a few different historical processes. For example, milk in the old days raw milk used to go bad very quickly until a Frenchman named Louis Pasteur figured out the process of pasteurization. So what we were doing was nothing really new in the grand scheme of things, but the application is what made it new. So, but eventually we figured it out, and we were able to get the shelf life of the worm tea to go from originally, like I said, 24 to 48 hours We extended that at first to 3 to 6 months, and now we've finally extended that out to about 18 to 24 months.
Wow, that's so awesome.
It's
That is
considerable.
big. Yeah.
It's big. It's very big, and it's useful for the farmer, because if you're a farmer, right, and you buy, let's say, several totes of fertilizer and you don't get a chance to use it this season, well, what if it goes bad and before next season rolls around, you've just lost all that money. So the fact that it can last up to 2 years or even longer in some cases, that means the farmer gets to use it.
And it sounds like you're a pretty wise businessman, right? You found a good product, and then you found the economics of it to make it real, right? To make it from something that's interesting to something that could actually be used and be profitable to everyone, right?
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to be successful, otherwise you're just doing experiments, right?
Yeah, or you're just doing experiments, or you're just, a lot of the sustainable agricultural world isn't sustainable, right? There's so many organic fertilizers that charge a premium. And while charging a premium is nice because it makes you more money, if your organic solution is more expensive, substantially more expensive than the synthetic, then the farmer who is operating on a razor thin margin is never going to want to switch, right? Because their livelihood, their family relies on them making the correct economic decision. Even they care about the fields and about the fertilizer runoff more than anyone does, and the long-term health of that soil, but they cannot afford to make the organic choice if it means they don't get to put dinner on the table.
That's a good point. Yes.
Yep, it's exactly right. I can't tell you how many podcast guests we've had on that say the same thing, right? Farmers do not want to destroy the soil.
No.
But every plant needs NPK. It's got to come from somewhere.
Yep.
Right. You can't, as soon as you grow there, it's gone. Plants take it and you got to put it back. So.
Yes. We pull calories out of our soil physically. That is what growing is. It is to take the calories that exist in the ground and in the air and to coalesce it into a package and send that somewhere else. So you lose those calories. Every harvest, the soil depletes a little bit. That's why we used to have the crop rotation that Charlemagne introduced in Western Europe. That's why we used to leave fields fallow for 20 years so that we could allow, carbon to return through the process of photosynthesis. So we could allow cover crop to take over. So we could allow, nitrobacter to colonize the soil and bring nitrogen back in. Now, we use the same field ad nauseum. And that means the calorie cycling is way, way more aggressive than it naturally is. And that is a fundamental problem. And there aren't a lot of ways around that. Earthworms are good because their entire existence is built around rapidly cycling nutrients. But even the earthworm, doesn't poop pure nitrogen. It poops a lot of these other things. So it takes a lot of work to get it up to the level where it can provide the equivalent nitrogen that you might get from 70 pounds of urea.
Sure. So I understand that your product, which is called Wriggle Brew, right, has won a couple of contests and some pretty impressive ones, right, at UCF. So you want to tell us about what you guys won? I love this story.
It's actually a really fun story for a couple of reasons. But yeah, so when we got started as a business, we were able to begin, even though we were students, we were able to begin this business because we won a $15,000 prize from the University of Central Florida. And that was through a business competition called the Joust. And the story around that one is very fun and kind of dramatic. And if in some alternate universe they decide to make a movie about Wriggle Brew, this would be a big part of that movie. Like I said, I was a researcher at UCF, and while I was there, I used to go on research trips occasionally, and one of those was out to California. So we were at UCF. We were asking for money from the university to start our business. They kept saying no to us. Finally, they told us, well, if you're really serious about this, you really want funding, you should participate in this Joust competition. There's a $15,000 grand prize, yada, yada. You can put in an application. Everyone at the university is doing it, but maybe you'll win. Good luck, kid. So we threw our hat in the ring. I wrote an application. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't hear anything back for a couple weeks. And again, I'm a researcher, so I'm planning on this research trip. I end up flying out to California with my PI, and we're out there for days and days. We're out, we're flying drones over the mud, doing spectroscopy of like random stuff. Anyways, it's a cool trip, and it's a lot of fun, and it's paid for by the university, so I'm very happy to be out there. And but it's also part of my job, and so I'm getting paid a wage to be out there. And I hear a couple days into the trip, I get this message, this email from the university. Congratulations, you're moving on to the semifinals for your for the joust competition. And I'm thinking, okay, that's great. Well, what do I do about it? Oh, well, the semifinals are they're going to start tomorrow or in 2 days. So you need to be here at UCF in person in the College of Business to do your presentation. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm in California for another like 5 days or something. I'm like, we're gonna go see Yellowstone next. We're doing all this cool stuff. So I asked my PI. I'm like, okay, I hate to be that guy, but I have to leave to do this competition thing. Is it can I get like a ride to the airport? I'll pay for the plane ticket. I gotta fly out there. Can I come back? And he goes, no.
No.
One, if you leave, all the funding that I spent on you will pretty much be wasted. So don't bother coming back. Second of all, I'm not flying you. I'm not driving you to the airport. That's like a 3-hour drive, and we're in the middle of nowhere. So if you want to go do this thing, you can find a way there. But I'm not doing that. Also, there's no guarantee you're even going to win this thing because this is the semifinals, not the finals. So good luck. And I'm thinking to myself, this is terrible. I'm in the middle of rural California. I'm going to move out on this, this possible win. And I think to myself, okay, if I'm 20 years from now, right? If I'm 42 in the future and I'm looking back on this, right? Like, what am I going to regret more? Am I going to regret that I didn't try to do this and that, who knows what might have happened if I'd won? Or am I going to regret, that I just, went through a lot, tried my best and didn't succeed? I figured I might as well give it my best shot because, I had the least amount of responsibility in my life at that point. So I spent all of my savings. I had about $1,400 in savings. I spent $400 on an Uber and a taxi and a bus ticket to get from rural California all the way to San Jose. And then I spent the last like 800 of the $1,000 that I had practically on a red-eye flight back to Orlando. I got in my car. I slept in the parking lot. I went into the university. I did my 10-minute pitch. And I passed out again. And then they told me I was moving on to the finals. And then we won the grand finals, 2 weeks later or a week later.
That's awesome.
And Wriggle Brew was born.
Yes. All my friends came to see it. My parents came to see it. And they're like, this is real. Wow. Okay.
Wow. And you were up against you had some competition that was sponsored by some big guns, right? Like
yeah,
Google.
I was kind of stupid. I mean, there was a company there that had the backing of Microsoft. They actually later got acquired by Microsoft. We were the worm guys. Yeah, we beat them.
Probably the lowest form of technology versus the highest form of technology.
That's a very good way to put it. I mean, they literally introduced us on stage and we have a company here backed by Microsoft and a company backed by Google, and they're doing cybersecurity things, and we have a rocket company, and then we have the worm poop guys, and then the audience is all laughing. Doesn't matter.
I love that story.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, you're still in college now?
No, actually, so I graduated a year after that.
Okay.
And after that, we hit the ground running. We got some funding from a couple of different federal agencies. We got a lot of farm customers, and now we're a real business.
And I had a chance to look at your website page. I went in and looked at it earlier this morning, and it's so professional and it looks awesome.
Thank you.
I was very impressed. Thinking that worms could go that far and be a resource that, like I said, I didn't know anything about. So that was very awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, they're a huge resource. They, like I said, they produce amazing fertilizer, but they also eat waste. They eat garbage, and we have plenty of food waste. I won't name names, but for example, there's a grocery store, a very well beloved one here in Florida, and they produce. I've talked to their stores and their management about this. They produce 600 to 700 pounds of food waste just from in fruit cutting alone every day. Every store that they have, it translates to hundreds of thousands of food waste just from this one chain of grocery stores every single day. If you extrapolate it out to all their stores, and the same thing applies to all of our restaurants and all of our houses, and all that food waste piles up and makes methane. It's very bad for filling up landfills and so on.
So I want to talk about your Wriggle Brew, but first, what's the best worm for making worm castings for the folks? What do you use?
So that is a matter of opinion rather than a matter totally of
Sure.
empirical fact. But I will tell you my opinion on it because I have a favorite earthworm, and my favorite earthworm is Perionyx excavatus. That is the blue Indian earthworm, and those guys, I love them because they are heat resistant. They can tolerate 95-degree days. They don't care about humidity. They don't care about salt, and they are ravenous eaters. They eat material extremely quickly. They eat their body weight every day, and they reproduce fast. And the manure that they make is very high quality. A lot of people don't like the blue worms for home worm farming because they tend to try to escape the worm bin. They're very energetic. But if you do a good job about containing them, they are almost unrivaled here in Florida and throughout the South for making worm castings. The second best is the red wiggler, of course, the classic red wiggler.
Yeah, that's what we use. Yep.
Those are great. The red worm is also a great worm. I would say fourth on the list is probably the African nightcrawler.
Okay.
They're heat tolerant. They are also pretty salt tolerant, but they're not very good at eating material. They're pretty slow, but they are good for fishing. You can catch crappie, bass with them very, very easily.
Almost every fish likes worms.
Oh yeah, but you can't hook a red wiggler. You try and put a red wiggler on a hook, it's just sad. But if you put an African nightcrawler on the hook, you need like a deep sea hook for that. Practically, they're big worms.
Monsters.
They're huge. They're like the dune worms.
So when you're talking about your product here, the Wriggle Brew, and the tea that you're making, when you're talking to farmers, is it mostly the farmers that are looking at sustainability, or is it the traditional farmers?
Surprisingly, we've actually had a lot more success with the traditional farmers. So, for example, the vast majority of our customer base right now for Wriggle Brew the liquid are soy and corn commodity farmers. So these are folks from Maryland to Idaho who are growing crop in big industrial application. They aren't really that concerned about the organic element. They're concerned about results. But worm tea, like I said, has some uniquely beneficial results. The big thing is that, it helps fertilize the plant, but it also induces better stress resistance, better immune strength. It tends to have a positive benefit for helping in droughts. And of course, we've also found just superior yield when you use things like Wriggle Brew compared to nitrogen fertilizer. In soy, for example, we saw a 30% increase in bushel yield in some of the farms that were applying it. That's huge for them.
That's big.
It's enormous. And the same with corn, we saw Brix score. Brix, if you're a corn farmer, you know this very well, but it's the reflection of the sweetness, basically. We saw a Brix score in the corn farms we were treating go from 7 to 28.
Wow.
That's a triplicate or more, benefit. So when you're a farmer and you see that, you don't really care if it's an organic thing. What you care about is, okay, this is something that's going to help my operation. It's going to help my field. So that's been a lot of our customer base. And we're very grateful for that because ultimately that's what we want to, those are the farmers we want to target more than anything. The organic guys, they're great, but they're great. They're ones who are already doing a good job when it comes to runoff. It's the folks who are on these big commercial farms who don't have the choice. We are really grateful that we are now able to give them that choice.
And so just quickly, so you sell direct to consumers too over your website, is that correct? For small gardeners or small farmers?
Yeah, 85% of our business is selling to these big commercial farms, but we also supply to the home gardener. If you have as much as a few houseplants, we'll sell to you. We don't discriminate. We have We have single bottles of 32 ounce, brew. That's a quart, as much, and all the way up to a full truckload of 18,000 gallons. So,
Oh my goodness.
let us know what your preference is, and we'll make it happen. And we do also 16-ounce bottles on Amazon now. So if you're very trepidatious and you aren't sure of the impact of worms, you can even get a less than $10 little bottle on our Amazon page and try it out.
That's
Any
amazing.
any small local growers, I highly recommend looking up Wriggle Brew and trying it. You will
Yes,
not be
please. Try it. Yeah, it'll go very, very well. We got a guy in Bradenton growing azalea. We got folks up, in the north, in the Panhandle, growing watermelon and citrus and everything else, and they have great results with it. So we love to serve local, and we're cheaper for your local too, because shipping is very small or non-existent.
So tell me about some new innovations that you've been doing with your company.
Oh, yes. Okay. So this is a really important question. And so we talked a little bit about how we were working on using earthworms to produce shelf-stable fertilizer, but we've also been using earthworms to do one other major thing, and that is to break down plastic waste. And this has actually been one of the things we've gained a little bit of notoriety for in social media and on local news. But we've been able to get earthworms to eat a lot of common plastics. And we actually won a big grant for this, our first research grant for this back in 2023, to explore the application of earthworms for breaking down plastic waste. And we just recently won an even larger grant this year to continue pursuing that research. And really, it all boils down to the fact that, like I said earlier, earthworms are decomposers. Their primary niche is to break material down. It's to take waste and consume it. And so some of these worms have actually adapted enzymes to break down the kinds of resins you might find in like pine bark. And it turns out by a quirk of evolution that those same enzymes also work on certain soft plastics. And it just boils down to the fact that the molecule looks, almost exactly the same. So the enzyme can operate on it. And so what we decided to do was we wanted to explore, one, if worms can eat small amounts of plastic, can we make them eat more plastic and faster so that we can, start to address this massive plastic pollution problem? And two, does the plastic that they eat, when they eat that plastic, does it turn into earthworm manure? And is that earthworm manure usable as fertilizer? Because then it opens up this possibility of we can turn plastic into organic fertilizer, into soil, and into a product that could maybe pay for the process of destroying the plastic. So those were our questions. That was what spurred our research. That's what we explored. And what we discovered is, yes, you can get worms to eat a heck of a lot more plastic. And second, when they do eat that plastic, yes, you can get an earthworm fertilizer, earthworm manure casting out of it. And it's been a very, very wild ride to figure those things out.
So I want to repeat that. You heard it. Most people, you heard it first here. If you're watching our podcast, turning plastic that's polluting our earth into soil, and doing one or the other would be extremely beneficial. You're telling us you could take plastic and grow stuff out of, transform it into growing substrate for fruits and vegetables.
Yes, and most critically, do that without leaving any micro or nanoplastics behind.
That process, that's called polyburn. And did you phrase that yourself, or is that?
I'm still workshopping the name, but yeah, we call that the polyverm process. Poly
Okay.
from polymer, verm from vermicomposting. So we just smashed them together in a portmanteau, and that's polyverm. And and the basis of it is worms breaking down plastic.
I'm going to be honest with you, Sam. That is $1 billion product to me. That solves such a huge problem, and benefits mankind on the backside. Very impressed, and the way you did it. You're doing the earthworm thing, the regular good old fashioned, and now you're doing this is just such a great way to do it. I'm blown away.
Thank you.
in my opinion, if anybody here, if you watch one of our podcasts and take that away, that is probably the most amazing thing. And we've had a lot of amazing people. To me, that is amazing that you've come up with that.
Thank you.
And I hope,
Well, I mean,
I hope
it's
people
the
hear
worms who
that.
came up with it.
Yeah, well, yeah, they've been doing it for a long time though, Sam, and you come along to figure out how to make it work, right? So
Yeah.
it takes some of that credit, but it's not easy to get $1 million grant from the government, and
No.
so there's definitely some merit to what you've got cooking there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It was really hard to get that grant. It took a lot of work, but the thing that
Yes.
was the scariest is, a few months ago when Doge was really running at full tilt, we almost lost the grant. They actually cut our funding briefly, and then it came back, and now it's congressionally funded, so we're guaranteed. But it was close. It was frightening there for a minute.
Oh yeah, nothing's for certain, especially with the government. That's for sure.
No, but once it did come through, it's been an amazing, it's been a blessing. It's been an amazing thing for us. We've been able to start scaling the process up a lot more, and we just got in. Actually, we just got in a big piece of equipment yesterday, a huge pyrolyzer kiln for us to break down more of the plastic, and that's going to allow us to do now as much as 100 pounds a day through our system, which is way more than we were doing before.
Well, and like anything else, once it's expensive to get that figured out, but once you can bring that cost down, you can put this type of system, whatever you're cooking up, in a lot of dumps, right?
Oh yeah,
And
it's scalable.
as soon as you can make it somewhat cost affordable, these people are going to want that, right? Cities, counties, states are going to want that, and that's great. That's great.
It's something that if properly deployed, it would be able to eliminate about 60%, 80% of the plastic that exists a year. And even more interesting than that, I think, you look at the number of microplastics that translates to. It's about 156 trillion particles of microplastic a year.
Wow.
That's what we could potentially abate if this system is fully scaled, just in the US.
It's very exciting.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So, where do you see the future of regenerative fertilizer heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's a very good question. I mean, the future, I think, definitely lies in using a lot more of stuff like Wriggle Brew and a lot more things like worm castings. I think a big part of it really just lies in the continual improvement and application of microbiology. That's something that I think has been underrated in the last 10, 15 years. Is there's been an explosion in the understanding and in the application of bacteria, mycorrhiza, microorganisms as fertilizer. That has been a huge thing. There's only so much improvement we can do to, make nitrogen more applicable or make, worm castings more applicable. But it's the bacteria, the peptides they produce, the enzymes they make, the nutrient sequestration or cycling that they perform. That's where the future really lies. So I think next 10 years, we're going to see even more and more bacterial applications, fungal applications. Wriggle Brew will be a part of that. But my hope is that, especially in light of the fact that we now have tariffs are a reality, we still have a big volatility in the petroleum market. Fertilization is going to move more and more to things that can be produced domestically, which are things like bacteria, and things which can be produced without the requirement of the unsustainable petroleum input, which again is things like bacteria and fungi. So that's where I think the industry is going. I think a lot more farmers are going to lean into that as they discover the benefits. And Wriggle Brew, I hope, will be a big part of that.
I agree. All right. So, Sam, it's been a great conversation. We'll give you the opportunity to leave with a final thought or statement of what you want the listeners to take away. And you can go ahead and think about that for whatever you need. But this is your opportunity to do your final thought. So,
thank you. Well, I have two final thoughts. I think one, that if you're interested in fertilizer that does not cause runoff, Wriggle Brew exists. We are an option. So I recommend you look into us, use our product if you really want your plants to benefit and the soil to benefit as well. But second, and this is, I think, the more important part, if you are concerned about plastic, as I have been, if you are concerned about the soil, as I have been, this is something for you to take hope in. There are solutions. these are not utterly intractable problems. They are engineering challenges that we as a species have the solutions for. We just need to spend a little time getting our hands in the dirt and finding the solutions. And we've done a little bit of that here at Wriggle Brew. And hopefully with the continued support of people like you, we'll be able to keep doing that. And others will be able to do that as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for joining us today. That's about all the time we have for this podcast.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to Modern Farming. Be sure to follow us, share, and join us again as we grow knowledge about the world that feeds us.
Thanks again, Sam, and best of luck to you.
Thanks for having me.